What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Calling the Shots right here on the OH Report. I'm Brian Skowronski, joined by the one and only
Chris Hershberger.
And tonight, our first ever guest. Welcome to the program, David Sheldon, the boys' head basketball coach and the athletic director for Colonel Crawford High School. Coach, when you're doing those two jobs on your day-to-day on the regular, and then coronavirus hits and there's no longer any sports and all the athletes are kind of on a hiatus right now, what are you doing on a day-to-day? How are you conducting your business?
Well, first of all, I communicate with our superintendent principal daily. And, when all this happened, Brian, we had the shutdown. We were told on a Friday we had our last practices, and our coaches communicated to the kids what the rules of the shutdown that were from the OHSAA. And it was a sad day, with all of our practice. These kids don't just start come beginning of March into February. They've been working in off-season training and everything. And it was a tough day for our kids. And now we're sort of just in the holding pattern to see what happens. And I think the big thing through all of this is, we're all in this together, and we got to, stay home, as we've heard every day from Governor DeWine at 2 p.m. We communicate with our athletes through telephone, through texting, checking in on them. We've also posted workouts on our website where kids are getting assignments right now, doing their online schooling, where they have the workout from us that they can do at home by themselves. So, other than that, as an athletic director, I'm working on schedules for next year. We have some coaches to hire for next year where we're making phone calls and preparing for that, and, just keeping our student athletes up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, this has to be doubly difficult for you, being that your wife, I understand, is also a coach, and this has put, an abrupt stoppage to athletics. So how is that affecting your home life? You guys are used to a lot of energy with, competitiveness and sports. How is that affecting you guys at home?
I would say that's a great question. It's probably the most I've ever been home with my wife in this amount of days.
That's true.
As an AD and a coach, you're, even when you're done with school at 3 o'clock, you're at school, all evening. So it's definitely put a different twist to our relationship. But, I've got 2 young daughters at home that are going through their online education. Every day we're out on the driveway shooting hoops, throwing the football in the backyard, throwing the softball, or running down the road getting exercise. So we're having to do the same thing with our kids. And with my wife being in education, she's back and forth to Winford, where she teaches and coaches for the past 24 years. So we're sort of in this together and, communicating with kids. And I think a lot of this is people learning on the fly. You never prepared for this in a college class. You never prepared this in a graduate class. This is all on the fly. And, I'm fortunate at Colonel Crawford to have a wonderful superintendent that has done a great job of communicating with staff, our community, and our students through this whole process.
Yeah, this is obviously a unique opportunity for you and Amy to be under the same roof at the same time, whereas during the winter months, you probably don't see each other a whole lot. So have you learned anything about your guys' relationship or Amy that you didn't feel like you previously knew until you've been locked up with her for the last couple of weeks?
I have to say, be careful answering this question.
Good call.
I've learned there's several jobs that I have to do around the house that I normally don't do because I'm not here. So there's several jobs. I've had to teach my kids and homeschool them as well when they're frustrated with things. And, it's been good. Every night as a family, we watch a movie, we play games. And that stuff, I'm going to be honest, Brian, we've never got to do because of being basketball coaches and athletic directors. There is stuff in the evenings. During the day, we're working, but in the evenings, we've got to do some things as a family that we've never done. And I've told my daughters, they're 8 and 10, you're going to remember 2020 the rest of your life. Someday you're going to tell your kids about this pandemic that went on and say, I lived this and what happened. And, as an 8 and 10-year-old, they don't quite grasp it. Just like when you're coaching teenagers, telling them to enjoy the moment and what it's all about. A lot of them were ready to graduate and be done. I think everybody reflects back and you appreciate what you have, and what you're being able to do when we are in the normal life. And, we've taken advantage of some of that time for our family, in the Sheldon household.
Now, you mentioned keeping in contact with athletes and students as the athletic director. How has that been particularly for those seniors? This is heartbreaking, I would imagine, for those seniors who may not get back to school before the end of this year. So what's your impression about how they're dealing with that prospect?
That's a great question. And, our coaches are doing it individually, and then I'll check in a few as well. And I think the biggest thing is they just want a chance. They don't care if it's May and we only play tournaments. They just want an opportunity to compete at the high school level one last time. This is their last hurrah. Most of ours, almost all of them won't go on and play college athletics. Yes, we do have a few that will, but this is their last chance to compete at any sports other than in the men's rec league, whatever. And, I think they're sad. And I think it's the parents as well. You look back, not just sports, what's going to happen with proms? What's going to happen with academic awards night? Graduations. You look at the college level, they're already canceling commencements. So there's a lot of unknowns, and I think it's a sad time for our athletes as well as our parents and our community, just not knowing the unknown right now, Chris. And, I think it's also, we talk a lot in sports, the reason I got into this coaching wasn't for wins and losses. It was teaching kids life lessons. And I think this is a life lesson that these kids are learning now, that appreciate the moment. We're not able to get in school. We're not able to get in the weight room right now and work out, kids. It's old school. Get in your driveway, shoot a basketball, go in the backyard, throw the football or baseball with dad, run down the road for track and all the different sports. So, I think it's going to make kids, when we do come out of this, appreciate a lot more what they have the opportunities to do on a daily basis as a student as well as a student athlete.
You had just mentioned there that wins and losses is not why you signed up to be a coach. That's not anything that's necessarily that important to you. But you are closing in on 250 career wins. You're the all-time career win leader at your program there at Colonel Crawford, coming off of a season, 23 wins, program record. What do milestones then mean to you? How do you take those, compartmentalize them, and ultimately, what are they to David Sheldon?
What they mean to me is all the players that have been a part about it. You know what I mean, Brian? And you think back, this is my 14th year that I just completed, and getting back to the regionals, we've been to, 9 district finals in my 14 years. And the first 2 times, I'll be honest, we got to the regionals. And you look at, then we went through a stretch, and then to get there again this year, you just appreciate it a lot more. You took it for granted as a young coach. And I think the one thing that I do is cherish the memories. And I think the thing about, every team is different. They all have different makeups. They all have different relationships. And, it's just the journey that you get to experience with those kids. And I think the neat thing for me now is seeing these kids. When we started, they were elementary kids. And now they're graduating. The Reese Walker, the Jordan Fenner, the Gavin Fickners, they're graduating, seeing them grow and mature as young men. And then now they're going to go into college. And then now my older guys, our first regional team back in 2009, they have families. They're successful in the job force. And I think that's the special part of the milestones is that, every relationship with each team is different. And we've had so many great players over the year that we've been blessed with. And I've been greatly blessed with unbelievable assistant coaches. It's not David Sheldon. It's a Colonel Crawford basketball program. And I think that's the big part of why I look into milestones. It's not me. It's Colonel Crawford as a whole. And I'll say this, Brian, it starts with our Board of Education administration. Being the president of our Basketball Coach Association, you see so much turnover in coaching right now. And you see it a lot, Brian, year to year with, schools you cover. And I have a supportive board. I have an unbelievable superintendent and principal that support our program. And that's big because in coaching, we're not always going to keep everybody happy. I'm looking out for, 50 some kids, 7 through 12 in our program, where parents look out for 1 child or 2 child, their kids. And, you're not always going to keep everybody happy. And the support system that we have around us is a big reason why we've been successful year in and year out.
I appreciate that kind of humility coming from a coach.
Always,
that's amazing. And David, I think my question to you as a coach, you've this amazing track record. I looked at, the data here, and I'm just super impressed, by your track record. Bravo and kudos to that. But as a coach, year to year, how are you assessing and evaluating your coaching and getting better each year? Because clearly your track record proves that progress is a big part of what you're doing.
I think the biggest thing, I've been fortunate. My father was a coach for over 30 years at Winford High School, had 450 wins and, part of every Hall of Fame in the state. And I think the thing that I do is I lean on other people. You know, I talk to Joe Baylog weekly at Ontario. I talk to guys across the state of Ohio. Today I was talking with Joe Bettyfield, a great friend from Willard, and Greg Nossman, who's a coach at Olentangy Liberty. So I'm always picking other coaches' brains. You know, you go to clinics, but I think some of the best to learn from this day and age are high school coaches, because you can listen to a college guy speak and maybe get a nugget, but the college is totally different than high school. At a college, they have 10 managers. You know, we don't have a manager, you know, in the gym. They have 7, 8, 9 assistants. And I think one of the ways I challenge myself is talking to my peers and getting things from them. What works for you? What doesn't work? You know, the problems that I'm dealing with as a coach, some of them have, and we just bounce ideas. And I think that's some of the greatest thing is the coaching fraternity, because as coaches, as head coaches, you know what we all go through. And I think that's a good way. You know, they're dealing with parents, they're dealing with communities, they're dealing with administrators. And one of the best ways, X's and O's, no matter what it is talk to our peers. So I have a very tight coaching fraternity in the high school level that I lean on, and also my assistant coaches. My assistant coaches challenge me daily. Hey, here's something we saw. What do you think about this for next year with our personnel? So you're always thinking outside the box, and, you know, you never can think that you're satisfied. We tell our kids, don't be satisfied, and I think that's a big thing as a coach. You got to challenge yourself, anybody in any business, any life, to make yourself better every day.
Well, just about anybody in this area that follows high school sports, they know about David Sheldon. They know about the Colonel Crawford program and what you've been able to develop there and the success. But what I want to know about is David Sheldon, the player, because I was doing some Google searches the last couple of days, and I saw some pictures. I'm pretty sure it was you, Coach. There was some hair on the top of the head, so it was a little bit confusing for me. But I hear that back in the day at Winford High School that you could really go, and I also noticed that you're in the Hall of Fame over there at Bluffton. So, I mean, don't hold back. Let me know, what kind of player and athlete was David Sheldon back in the day?
Well, I was fortunate to be a part of an unbelievable program. The Winford basketball program was outstanding. And I'll be honest, and I share this a lot with our kids. You know, everybody looks for instant gratification this day and age. I never got to play varsity basketball, Brian, until my senior year, because my junior year went to regionals. I was on the bench, didn't play much. And then my senior year, I got to start. And you talk about my career, and, you know, I blame it on my high school coach. So I will blame it on my high school coach. By the way, that was my father, so I'm not complaining about
That's funny.
I blame it on him. But then I was fortunate enough to get recruited after my senior year, and I went on to Bluffton University. And you talk about my career, I had an outstanding experience there. And some of my best friends to this day are those guys, and those are guys in the coaching fraternity as well. And I think that the neat thing is I was able to start 4 years at Bluffton and be a part of some special teams and hit some milestones like you talked about, Brian. But it all came from a work ethic. You know, I spent, I was always the shortest kid on the floor. I was never blessed with size, and I had to outwork everybody. You know, if somebody was an hour in the gym, I had to spend 2 hours on my own in the gym. And I think that's transpired, and that helped me turn me into today. You know, I have to work, because I've had that grained into my brain from my father. And I think that was why I was successful, because I wasn't the most athletic. I wasn't the tallest, but I worked, and it was a great career at Bluffton. I hit a lot of milestones. I was fortunate enough to go in the Bluffton Hall of Fame because of the success I had, but a lot of that credit goes to my teammates and coaches as well.
Well, I have a personal connection to my next question for you, David. I understand that you have 2 daughters, and I'm also a coach, not in a mainstream sport like basketball, football, or baseball. It's Olympic taekwondo. And my daughter is number 1 in the country and the world right now, training for the Olympic Games. And it's been a pretty special bond, you know, coaching her since she was 6 years old and when she first established. And Brian's been, you know, covering my daughter for a number of years.
She's the real deal.
But when she first started establishing her goals and everything, I had to set back and go, okay, how am I going to be dad and coach here? Because having a daughter, as you know, is a very special thing. So my question, David, is how are you, you know, traversing that process with your children?
No, that's a great question. I think I'm fortunate because my wife's a head girls coach, so I'm the dad.
So that helps.
You know, I think that helps me a lot. But you talk about that. You know, I talk about my high school years. Those were very challenging years playing for my father. because a lot of times what happened in the gym got carried over to home. And I tell people it was not easy. It wasn't fun. The hardest guy was on me. I remember one time in high school, I got kicked out of a practice and I had to find my own ride home because he wouldn't even take me home. It was a challenge with my father during those times of coaching. I look back now that I'm 44 years old and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. But when you're going through it as a kid, it's like, hey, why can't you just be my dad, not my coach? And I think with my daughters, now with Amy coaching and at girls at Winford, we talk about, hey, if you want to be great, if you want to be like Amber Rawl, who was the best to ever play for Winford, if you want to be like a Jordan Fenner, they spent countless hours on their own. And I push them and I relate to kids that are very good at the sport. And hey, let's get out in the driveway, do a workout. Let's get out in the driveway, do our ball handling. So that's how I relate it, because they look up to our players. That's the neat thing about having daughters or sons or whoever part of a coach. When we win the district championship this year, my daughter's going out and getting the medal, as a coach. They get to experience some special times. But, we push them, but it's not like it's overboard, because I see that too much. We want them to want to do it. It's not like I'm saying you got to do this, but a lot of times we're fortunate because they see the high school kids doing, they want to be the next great high school player in our area. And so that's how we sort of relate it, is those kids they look up to. Hey, here's how you became that good, because they worked at young ages to master their sport, or whether it's music. My one daughter loves music, and the other is, into sports. They're both in sports, but one is passionate about music. She's in theater production. She does that. So no matter what it is, let's do our best and try our hardest and put forward the best effort.
It sounds like you've done an amazing job of, wearing the dad and coach hat. And I applaud you, because it's very challenging. So I appreciate your perspective on that very much.
Thanks, Chris.
I was just noticing, Coach, that, with all the barbershops shut down, that probably doesn't impact you too much. Are you one of the self-shaving type of guys?
Yep, it's a razor, as long as I don't cut myself, because if I cut myself, then I got blood coming everywhere. But it's just a straight razor. I don't have to worry about the beauticians and barbershops being shut down during COVID-19.
Wow, he said straight razor.
Yeah, that's pretty hardcore. That's
old
school,
that's
Coach.
old school.
How long have you been shaving your head? Like, how long has this been going on for you?
Well, it started to thin out. I don't know, probably in my low 30s, and I'm like, I ain't doing the comb over. I'm not going to do this. And I just put the razor to it.
He said, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's been the right move, Coach, and certainly with as much as you perspire when you're, at least when you're coaching out there, it probably helps not having all the hair for it to get caught up in. Probably the right move all the way around.
I wouldn't have to have that towel if I had hair. At least my hair would be sweating. Now it's so the towels, at the end of the game, you can wring sweat out of that thing, Brian, which you've seen in post-game interviews over the years.
Well, Coach, obviously you have so many ties to Winford High School, where you were a player. Your father was a legendary coach. You got the wife over there who was a legendary coach in her own right. And then you go to the rival school and you're coaching for Colonel Crawford. So I'm curious, now that you've established this legacy where you guys beat up on Winford pretty good in boys hoops, how are you received now when you go over to Winford? Is there a little bit of some friction, or is it all good?
Some of my best friends are over there. Kids I graduated and played with, their kids are going through the system. So they are great friends of mine. I'm the biggest supporter of the Winford Lady Royals when my wife is coaching and her kids. And I've got great friends over there. It's a great community. The bottom line is we play twice a year and you compete for 32 minutes. And afterwards, hey, then you move on, and those don't alter my relationships. Now, I think people in our communities, both Winford and Colonel Crawford, take that a little bit more serious than as coaches, but as a coach, as a perspective. Before I'm great friends with Steve Moore. He's a great friend. He's been a great mentor. He's the reason I'm at Colonel Crawford. He was the AD that hired me 14 years ago. And, we compete for 32 minutes, but then the next day we're talking about who we're playing next and what we're dealing with. So, you talk about that. I've got great friends over there. I have the utmost respect. I love that community, just like I love the Colonel Crawford community. But you compete for 32 minutes and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah. So we have a number of displaced athletes due to coronavirus right now, and they're not able to train and compete like they would love to. What kind of advice would you give to that athlete? And as a coach, it's a very small percentage of the athletes that is always hungrier than the rest of the team. They're always doing extra. What kind of advice would you give to that athlete who probably is hurting more than anybody right now?
I think the big thing is you got to be active, Chris. You got to get out and do stuff on your own. Too much this day and age. We're blessed to be able to have this interview, but technology. Kids are on Xboxes. They're on the PlayStation. They're on their phones, Instagram, all that stuff. And back when I was growing up, this is what you did. You went in the backyard and you played baseball, softball, football. You went in your driveway and shot. We didn't have back in the days 10 days in the summer where you could play as a team like we do now. You didn't have 4-man individual workouts like we do in the fall and spring. We coach almost year round now. It's 10 months out of the year with 4-man workouts and that. You went out in the driveway, and I think that's a big challenge for kids is you got to get out and work on your own, whether it's throwing the baseball against the wall outside, whether it's you and dad pitching and catching and you hitting, whether it's you making runs on the road for your track, whatever the sport might be is you got to push yourself. And I always talk to our younger kids in our elementary program. That separates the good from the great are the great ones do stuff when coaches aren't looking. And I think that's a big time right now. What kids at home are working on their own in the driveway, going through a workout or doing stuff right now for spring sports if they come back, and what are just, hey, I'm just going to go day to day, Groundhog Day, sit around, be on the computer, be on my Xbox or Instagram. So this is a big time of self-discipline where I've got to make sure I get out and do something. Even with my own daughters, we have a schedule right now. This is what you do every day, Monday through Friday. This class at this time, this at this time, lunch. This is when you get a recess, with elementary, just to keep them on a schedule. And I think that's a big thing with kids. And a lot of that comes from parents and discipline is you got to be on a schedule sort of like you normally are during the school day. And, this is a big test for kids on how are they going to make themselves better and separate themselves, what they're doing on their own, because there's no coach pushing them. There's no teammates pushing them right now other than a text or a phone call.
I'm going to imagine that you're a guy that's just like me that really enjoys their college basketball, their NBA, just a junkie in terms of watching it when you're not coaching it. How much is this impacting you not having, TNT to go home and watch the NBA game of the night before you go to bed? Is it cutting into your life as much as it is like ripping out my heart?
It's tough. This weekend was great, though. They had like the 82 game, North Carolina, Georgetown, CBS this past weekend.
Caught some of that.
Yeah, they had the NC State Houston, and my 10-year-old and I were watching the 1982 game, and she looks at me and says, "Dad, why isn't there a 3-point line down?" And you forget about that. She has never not seen a 3-point line. But I do a lot of reading. I read a lot on the internet. I read a lot, what's going on, and talk. I make a lot of phone calls. I think that's the nice thing with technology. This day and age, we can still call. You can FaceTime, different people. And I think that's one of the things that I occupy my time. And like I said, I'm spending more time with my wife and my daughters than ever, which, I'll look back someday, I'm anxious to get back. I'm going nuts being at home, but I'll look back and look at, man, those were some great times and memories that we got to spend together during this stay at home and all in this together. And, I think Governor DeWine, and he's done a great job with trying to, slow this thing down and flatten the curve. So that's what I've been doing. And I do a lot of reading on the internet, that kind of stuff, and even books at, various books.
Well, you piqued my interest with books. I'm a self-proclaimed book nerd. I'm constantly reading, especially when it comes to athletic performance and coaching philosophies, mental toughness. So with that being said, if there was one book that you could recommend to an athlete, as far as like better preparing their mind and physicality, what would that book be? And I know it's putting you on the pressure, but just one that stuck out to you.
Probably one of the best I've read over the past several years is Toughness by Jay Billis. He played for Duke. He's a commentator for ESPN, and that was a fantastic book that I read. As a matter of fact, one year we had our captains read it in the fall, and we came back and talked about it. So that was a very good one. Another one, Alan Stein. He's a he's a sports speaker, speaks to business. He just wrote Raise Your Game, and that was a wonderful book as well. I like books that make me think and challenge me. And you talked about previously, Chris, how do you get challenged? Situations you're in, and you hear it from, famous people. And I think that those are two of the best books that I've read lately, Raise Your Game by Alan Stein and Toughness by Jay Billis.
Awesome.
As it pertains to your craft, who are some of the top coaches at any level that you would say you're impressed with? You watch them and you see that they implement great game plans. Just any level of the game. Who do you like watching?
High school right now, I'd say Joe Baylog. Joe Baylog is a huge mentor to me. He really is. His track record and his record is phenomenal, which we've seen. But, him and I talk weekly all year long. At the high school level, I'm saying in this area, Steve Gray at Norwalk has been very successful. Steve Moore. I still look up to the veterans. That's who I look up to, because a lot of that is I grew up as a kid around those guys as they were coaching my father. I was in the rooms when they were all socializing, doing everything, just taking everything in. At the college level, I think a lot of Tom Izzo. I love Michigan State's Tom Izzo. He's fierce. He's intense. I think he is a unbelievable coach. He doesn't get all the 5-star, all the McDonald's, but year in and year out, Michigan State is up there. So I love Izzo. And you look at the professional level, I think that's the toughest of any. But Greg Popovich, I think he has the respect of the Spurs right now of NBA players who are hard to coach, where he's still in control of a basketball team with the Spurs. So, I think Pop is an unbelievable coach at the NBA level. And when you talk about the sport of basketball.
It's a good list.
It's a very good list. Solid list.
Where would you fit into that equation, David? Like, are you up in that upper echelon yet, or are you still trying to make your way into that level?
I'm still at preschool compared to that list.
There's the humility kicking in again, I think.
So there's room for improvement is what he's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have it.
Those guys.
Well, I can tell you this, David. I have not met you in person. It's been a pleasure getting to learn more about you and what you're doing at Colonel Crawford. I've read about you in the papers, and of course, I'm not as in tune with high school sports that Brian is with his career and his professional image. But I can tell you that I can recognize an amazing coach, and you definitely have proven that that's the case for you. And I just, I'm impressed by that. So it's a pleasure to learn about you.
Thank you. I'm passionate about working with kids, Chris. Doesn't matter if I'm an athletic director getting ready for a football game or a cross-country invite, or if I'm coaching the game of basketball or a baseball or softball, lining the fields and painting the fields. I'm passionate about kids and student athletes, and I'm very fortunate and blessed that God has put me in this position to make an impact on kids.
All right, Coach. Maybe just one more question for you before we let you get out of here. You're our special guest, so I don't want to make this about me, but it is my birthday today. Turning 35 years old, so I'm technically old enough to run for president. We'll see if I throw my name in the hat. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm still weighing out my options. But what I would like to know, if you can think back on some of your prior birthdays, what is the best gift that you can remember receiving on your special day?
I'd hate to say it. I don't remember too many birthdays because my birthday's February 21st, and it's the heat of basketball season. So the best one recently was we played on a Friday night this year and we won. So I didn't get to enjoy a lot of birthdays because it's in basketball. Growing up in a coach's house, being a high school player, being a college player, and then coaching, I don't remember a lot of my birthdays. I hate to say it because it was in the heat of the season. But probably give me a win on my birthday.
I'm never going to forget your birthday because it's the same day as my wife's.
And I love that he doesn't remember his birthdays because he's so busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of how most Americans don't remember their birthdays.
Right.
So kudos to you, David, for making an impact with all those, young kids. Great program that you have over there at Colonel Crawford. The Eagles Nest, one of the best environments that we have in all of North Central Ohio, and I might even argue the entire state. I've seen a lot of different gyms. So you got something good brewing over there, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy your lockdown, man. Enjoy your time with your family. I'm in the same boat too. I don't get to spend a whole bunch of time where it's all of us together. So the fact that we've had 2 consecutive weeks where we're eating meals together, we're playing games together, we have schedules just like you at my house where there's specific times for things. I think that we're all taking away some positives from this COVID-19. It hasn't been all bad.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and happy birthday, and thanks for all you do. Chris, great meeting you. You do a fantastic job, Brian. Our community appreciates what you do. I know you've got some of the sponsors from our community as well now, and can't thank you enough. I tell our kids we're spoiled with the high school coverage we get around this area in the media, because even when you go to college, it ain't like high school athletics the way we get covered. So thank you for everything, and stay safe and healthy and all in this together and make sure everybody's staying home so we don't lose lives.
Yes, sir.
That's right, buddy. I'm in with that line of thinking. So with that, Chris,
we just got to get some of this in here.
And we'll wrap things up right here. I'm calling the shots with our first ever guest, Mr. David Sheldon.
First ever.
See you next week.